So thank you everyone for coming to the Boston Office 365 user group. This is our 10th year running the show. So thanks to everyone that's been part of this for, ever since we kicked this off back in 2014. So I am Dimitri, I'm one of the organizers. We also have Bill and Dave that are also organizers. They're not here in person today, so you can air all of your grievances towards them. So if you were here with us last month, we had a great session by Bob German. He talked to us a little bit about building Copilot plugins. If you didn't get a chance to attend that session, we are working on getting that up on our YouTube channel. I think we're about 1 month behind on that. So keep an eye out there. All right, let's talk a little bit about Microsoft updates since last time. The big update is that Microsoft is now changing some of the licensing terms for unlicensed OneDrive accounts. So previously, if you had a OneDrive account that was under a legal hold or was part of an e-discovery case or what have you, you didn't need to have a license on the account, right? So you could delete the user, you could delete the account, the content would live there forever. Right? Or if we're all familiar, if we go into the OneDrive and we set how many days to keep the content for after the user is unlicensed, default is 30 days, you can set it up to 10 years. Now Microsoft is saying that they're okay with that for the first 90 days, but after 90 days, they're going to archive the OneDrive. They're going to charge you a monthly cost of 5 cents per gigabyte per month. And then furthermore, if you ever need to retrieve that out of the archive, there's going to be a retrieval fee. And once you retrieve it, it's only valid for 30 more days. And then it goes back to the archive state. Yeah. So this change is going to make a bit of an impact around your onboarding and offboarding policies and procedures. They're going to start rolling this out in January. So we have a few months to prepare for it. The next update is around automatic locations on bookable desks. So Microsoft gives us the ability to have resource accounts tied to hotel space that we might have within our offices, so that when you're in, you reserve a desk essentially for the day or hours or however you set it up, you can come in place, and in doing so, you work out of that location. Now, we all know that Teams rolled out this feature where you can manually specify if you're working from home or remotely rather, or in the office. Now, Microsoft has the ability to combine these two data sets together so that if you are working out of your office at a reserved desk, at that point, they can automatically change your status for you that you are in the office. Has anyone in this room or online taken advantage of any of these features between automatic or manual person? Anyone you know is in the room? All right. Moving forward, there's a new feature rolling out where you can now download CSVs of your webinars and town halls around the Q&A. So this is good for follow-ups, especially if you wanted to take any of that content and kind of rehash it out on your intranet blog, or if you wanted to go and actually take more insights for who is interacting with the Q&A portion of it. Next up, Microsoft is making it easier to sign into Outlook on our mobile devices. So instead of having to go in and type in your password on your mobile phones, which is not always convenient, especially if you're using strong passwords like we all are, Microsoft now has the ability for you to log into Outlook for the web and scan a QR code, which will then authenticate you into your mobile device. So in doing so, you type it in once, the secure code is tied to your user profile for a period of time, and then you can securely connect that to your Outlook mobile. Moving forward, so for those that have the Copilot for 365 license, for those that have Teams Pro licenses, there's a feature called an intelligent meeting recap, where Copilot or Teams Pro will take a look at everything that was discussed in the meeting, add the transcription, and it'll give you a nice summary of it. But a lot of us still work out of Outlook when dealing with calendars. So Microsoft is now adding a new feature where you can view that transcript that lives in Teams directly out of your Outlook calendar. So it just makes it that much easier to step over. Yes, Mike?
This requires a Copilot license, yes?
Copilot or Teams Pro. Yep. This is the one feature that both Teams Pro and Copilot overlap in.
Okay.
Another pretty cool feature coming out with Copilot is the ability to schedule a meeting with Copilot. So today, if you have an email thread of, let's say, 10 people on it, you can hit that manual button to go and actually see everyone's calendar, basically convert that email into a meeting request. Now, Copilot can actually go and identify the next availability of all the stakeholders that are part of the email chain. You could draft the agenda and it can send that out. Of course, it doesn't send it out for you, it just pops it up open so you can still make any tweaks that you deem necessary. But it just makes it that much a little bit simpler whenever you're scheduling a meeting from an email. The next is, is anyone in here using the coaching by Copilot feature in Outlook? Nope. So Copilot coaching gives you the ability for you to basically ask Copilot, hey, how is my email response that I just drafted? And Copilot will do things such as give you feedback based on tone, based on the reader's sentiment. Are you coming off overly negative or unintentionally direct and blunt? Are you clear? Are you kind of rambling on and talking about ideas in circles, right? So it gives you all these different recommendations for how you can replace and reword what you're saying, to soften the tone, to improve the clarity, and so forth. So there's a new feature coming out where you can do apply all, where if you're not interested in really scrolling through all of the recommendations, especially for longer emails, you can just trust Copilot to go ahead and do it. I've been playing with this feature. It's actually pretty good. I tend to be very direct when I send emails. And I can see how sometimes that might come across as being rude or impolite. It's never the intention. The intention is just more of like, yes, approved, go do this, take it forward.
It's never the intention, or most of the time it's not the intention? Just asking.
Depends who the email's to. So it kind of helps me realize that, different people will interpret it different ways, especially when you start looking at cross cultures, across geographies. Anyways, I find it beneficial. If you haven't played with it and you have a license for it, I'd recommend it. So the next feature coming to Copilot is related to organizational asset libraries. So if you ever built an intranet in SharePoint, you can designate an organizational asset library to have things like your company logos, other branded information, maybe pictures around the office that you've hired a photographer to take, and so forth. And you can use those in your intranet sites when you're creating different content pages, images, and so forth. Now we have the ability for Copilot to dig into those organizational asset libraries. So if you're telling it to build you like a branded PowerPoint template or draft you a company letterhead that has X, Y, Z on it, it'll now be able to pull into those and pull out relevant information that it believes is relevant and use that as graphics for part of your prompt. That being said, thanks to the company I work for, Turn Digital, for sponsoring the user group. They help us with the food, regulatory fee, and everything else. Meetup is going up yet again for this upcoming year. All right, so with that being said, we have a great speaker today. We have Christian Buckley, who's been involved in the SharePoint community since the very early days. And then talk to us a little bit about crafting content with AI. So Christian, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And hey, I appreciate the invite to come out and talk to you guys. And I always, I wish I could be there in person. I've actually not been back to Boston in a few years. Some of you who know me in the history, I mean, I was with a company out of Seattle, and that got acquired by a company called Exceller that was up in Woburn. And so I was out there pretty much monthly, sometimes a couple times a month, depending on events. So spent a lot of time in the area. Actually did the drive from Seattle all the way to Boston one time with 2 little boys. So I got to drive the whole thing myself. It was great. It's awesome. Yeah, this is a fun topic that's kind of a combination of a couple different topics. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move some things around on my desktop here so I can share a few things. Do it that way. All right, now you should see as I switch between things. Yeah, because I'm going to jump back and forth. I'm going to walk through a couple things that I go in and do. So I have like the actual presentation part of this, and then one downside to not being in person is I prefer, my style is to have it very interactive. So I have my other monitor open, so I can, if there are hands raised or questions that you'd like to have answers, have a discussion, feel free to interrupt me. It's never rude. Just do it. But I'll watch the chat as well if there are questions. But my goal is to give you just an overview of this space, a little bit about what Microsoft is doing. It's really kind of the broader AI discussion around creating content leveraging AI. My background, so I guess I could forward the slide if I could get back to that button there. For those that don't know me, yeah, I'm now a 13-time MVP. I'm also a regional director, but my undergrad is in marketing. I've been in tech for over 30 years, going back to 91, going to a little software company, ended up working for EDS, then Pacific Bell, a bunch of startups, then big companies, Hewlett Packard, Microsoft. And really the last 15 years has been almost entirely working with mostly ISVs within the Microsoft ecosystem. So I've been in the space a long time, dozens of companies that I've worked with around the world. And a lot of that is, it even served as a time for 2 years as chief marketing officer for one startup out of Spain. It's been acquired, so they're not around anymore. But in this space, I'm a huge believer in content marketing. So a lot of what I work with customers is around content strategy. It's part of my recommendations. And as we've entered into the AI world, and I've had great discussions where the reality is that a lot of the way that we knew, like doing marketing, it's been being impacted by even search and how people are finding content now, which is, it used to be like my strategy, my recommendation for clients was also always to focus more on the organic rather than the paid strategies. And I know there's benefits to doing both things, but had a great conversation. As an example, I was out in Montreal visiting ShareGate a few years back, and they had gone from, if you know the ShareGate story, they went from a small little team, part of a larger parent company, but the small little marketing team, at the time I visited, they had, I think, 30 people, around 25, 30 people in their marketing organization. And like 2 years later, they were back down to like 5 or 6. And like, well, what happened? Like, what's going on? I said, oh no, it's that they optimized, they got everything to a point where they could operate at a similar level, with fewer people. And well, like, that's great. Like, but what's happening with your strategy? And they said, well, we're doing fewer pieces, but our strategy is fewer pieces of higher quality content. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, my recommendation for companies is to do a higher volume of high quality content. It's kind of, joking, of course, sort of, but flooding the waters with content out there. My point is not about having just, a bajillion pieces of content out there. Although I'll share some of what I'm doing and you'll say, wow, he's creating a bajillion pieces of content. But the idea there is that, that companies are not doing a good job of leveraging the content that they've created across multiple channels. So it's more about a marketing channel strategy than it is just volume of content. So I'm going to talk about that. Other things that I've done, that I'm doing that are out there. I've got my weekly podcast. It's actually, I've got the episode. I've not finished writing the blog post. It goes out today, every Thursday, the Collab Talk podcast. It's very heavy on AI. AI has been part of the focus of my podcast for the last 4 or 5 years. So I talk about collaboration, technology, the full stack. But I talk about the culture of team building, of kind of the organizational management, and then in productivity. I also started with Sharon Weaver, fellow MVP and RD. We have Project Failure Files, which is every Monday morning, talking about project management best practices. We're actually writing a book, and so we're doing the weekly show to building out the content there. I do weekly interviews with MVPs, and I do a governance show, the AMA series with a group of about 20 fellow MVPs from around the world. And then I used to do monthly, they're now quarterly Collab Talk tweet jams. And that's actually, the next one is in September. So yes, I'm doing a lot of things, but my wife and I are empty nesters. She works full time away from the house. I'm here with a small dog. So what else am I going to do but just tons of content? So what I'm going to try and go through, some of these things will go by very quickly, but just try to kind of a flow. And yes, I'll make the slides available. I realized I forgot to go and compile my list of additional resources with links. So I'm going to add that slide this evening. And then, Dimitri and David, I'll share the slides, and you can divvy those out to folks that want it. But I'm going to go through and talk about kind of what's happening, the evolution of AI, briefly about Copilot, talk briefly about the fundamentals of using AI. Again, from my experience and I know some of you are out there, the fact that you've got topics of extending Copilot, that side of it I don't really do. I have partners that go out and do that aspect of it. I trust that they know what they're doing in that space. But leveraging the content and specifically around marketing and channel development strategy, that's what I focus on. Then I'll get into some of the more marketing fundamentals around understanding the target audience and some SEO basics and leveraging the AI tools to incorporate those things in. I'll talk about publishing, and then I can't leave until I talk about content reuse. And that's just one of the strongest stories around AI for most organizations, is leveraging the AI to help you with the content reuse. And then, of course, questions throughout. So any questions before I start? Okay. Well, again, feel free to interrupt. And yes, Jennifer, you'll get the slides. All right, let's talk about the AI evolution. And I'm going to do this too, so I don't distract myself. I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm still here. You'll hear the voice. So I wish I do my deeper radio voice. Today we stand at the precipice of a new era. An era where artificial intelligence is not just a buzzword, but a critical component of our everyday work. Microsoft is leading this charge with innovative tools like Microsoft Copilot. These tools are not just redefining efficiency, they are becoming critical components in maintaining a competitive advantage in today's fast-paced digital era. So let's delve deeper into this space and find out how we can harness the power of these tools to transit. Yes, that is a dolphin with lasers mounted there. Pew, pew. All right.
Okay, Dr. Evil.
Had to do that. All right. So talk briefly about Copilot. We've all got Copilot. We've seen it. I mean, the vision for Copilot, I'm not down on Copilot. I was so glad when they reduced the threshold and allowed SMBs to go and buy. I went as my army of one. I went and bought it, paid with tax, $400 for the year. And then, of course, like a month later, they gave it for free to MVPs, sort of free. There's an asterisk with that. So I technically have 2 licenses for an army of one. But the vision is that it's an AI-powered assistant that revolutionizes the way that we create and code by providing on-the-fly suggestions, reducing errors, significantly improving efficiency. While there is more work to be done to realize this vision, it is well on its way. I'm very excited about it. Like, we all know what it does. We just talked about in the preview about the intelligent meeting recap, plugins to DevOps tools, adding intelligent code blocks. I mean, at the front, on the technical side of things, I know that the Copilot for GitHub, that whole space is exploding. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation around Power Platform usage for that. Like, I get it. I've gone in, I've taken courses, I've built things around Power Platform. That's not my skill set. I realized that, going in and to make something really functional and to understand, to be able to build the logic into a slightly more complex solution using Power Platform, leveraging Copilot to help create that logic and build that in is a lifesaver. And so it dramatically speeds up the delivery time of solutions. Their Copilot is, it's all over the place. You can go out there and I point people to it. If they don't have the licenses, go use it out in Bing. Of course, there's some things that are free. There's other places where you've got to pay for the licenses to get access to it, but it's all over the place. I believe, again, personal thing, that it is of value to pay the $30 a user. I realize that that's a high cost. Yes, it's expensive, but the reality that the thing about it is, the reality is that we're still early to truly understand the business impact and ROI of Copilot. I had hoped that by this time, by fall of this year, that we'd see much more content and business cases and coming from the community. And we're still pretty heavy in Microsoft marketing rather than community feedback and content around it. I'm hoping by the fall shows, certainly by Ignite in Chicago, I won't be there, but by the time I'm interviewing Jeff Teeper again this year at ESPC in Stockholm in December, that we should see more community content, community, business cases for here's what we're seeing, here's the value that we're getting out of that. But even personally, even with the limited ways in which I'm using Copilot, I find it invaluable. So summarizing and pulling insights from meetings, gathering insights and action items from read and unread email to keep me on task. I mean, it's huge, allowing me to do more of a deep dive into my own research and content. All of that is worth $30 a month for me because of the way that I leverage the technology. I'm not playing with it yet. But there's the Copilot for OneNote. I'm in, as you'll see, hardcore for the last 20 years, 15 years, 17 years, something like that, OneNote user. And most everything I've written in the last 15 years is all, I'm doing air quotes here, archived in OneNote. And OneNote is one of the first places when I'm researching a topic, because I use it to compile notes and some conversations and some emails pulling things over, as well as every article I've written and published out there. And when I remember to put the URL from those articles out there, but to capture all of that, to be able to go and use my own research and content as a research tool is huge. So I'm excited about that. And I love this idea, and I'm not going to go in and demo, doing a version for this for ESPC, and I will be building a Copilot and SharePoint and doing some other automations there. But if you have the licenses, you can go and do that today and connect it to a bunch of different places. And you can see that knowledge I'm plugged into, a SharePoint site that I created, as well as pointing to my own website and pointing to a number of data sources, and being able to then go and have a customized Copilot experience is fantastic. So again, you're not worrying about, am I pulling content and, yes, technically legal, legitimate to, but plagiarizing from other sources. Where is it pulling this content from? Is that content accurate? So if you're building up a volume of content and you want to build more around that content that is consistent and yours and comprehensive, and then go build content off that, ask questions, get insights, then going and building your own Copilot and hosting that is fantastic. Like what I'm doing for this one, so I'm building one around project failure files, so project management, where I've written extensively on this. My co-host Sharon Weaver's written extensively on this, and so we're compiling content. We're pulling down important articles. We're talking about getting a digital version of the PM box, so the project management body of knowledge, which is, if anybody's ever purchased one back in the olden times, when you do that, I mean, it's like a large telephone book. It's well over 1,000 pages, kind of big. And getting the digital version of that and adding that into our knowledge base to be able to leverage that from the content will just be fantastic. So we're experimenting with that. And as we're writing our book, which we hope to publish next year, we want to leverage this site and that knowledge base to go as we write. But knowing there's a couple fundamentals. When I do kind of Copilot readiness training, one of the first things I talk about with AI is understanding how is it pulling content, where is it pulling content from, how is it consuming that data, and then the second part, which everybody focuses on, which is the prompt engineering aspect of that. And I know there's great courses and resources that are out there. This is one of those topics, like if you work in the Microsoft ecosystem, especially if you're a Microsoft MVP, every MVP feels like, oh, I know all the people I need to know inside Microsoft. And then you have a conversation in something specific and they're like, oh, I don't know those people. I don't know that product. I don't know that team. It's like, right. We all know somebody that works at Microsoft, but how well do we really know the people that we need to know inside the company? Similar with prompt engineering. If you've gone out and played around with it, you know some of the basics. Well, here are some of the basics. And is anybody familiar with all of these? Actually waiting for a response.
So I recognize them, but it's not like I actually have used all of them by a long shot.
Yeah, it's just to give you an idea. So this is, again, it comes back to, here we have the tool. And so what I'm going to show you is ChatGPT and show you some examples. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. There's a lot of data that's out there. I would even say go do like a Coursera course or LinkedIn Learning on prompt engineering, but just to give you an idea, because I don't think that the average just casual user even understands how powerful some of these shows, some of these tools are. I'm just seeing Gil Ronan asking if the recording will be on this. I was getting ready to heckle Gil Ronan tonight, so I should share a story at the end about Mike. So if anybody wants to go have some fun. Oh, this is being recorded. Okay, I can't tell you on the recording because you have to be able to use it like it's you're legit talking about it. All right, let me get in and talk. Can you still see my screen? Just make sure it's still working.
Yep, you're still fine.
Right. So going into your prompt. So here's just some examples that I pre-built, and I've got some stuff using for other content out there, but I made sure I went in some of the missing ones and I added earlier today. But going in and explaining the role of information architecture in an information management platform. So talking about IA in SharePoint, for example, and you can explicitly list those things, be very specific. Assume that I have no background in information technology. All right, so it's breaking down what is IA, organizing the data, creating the navigation, labeling and categorization, kind of moves through with the main components of there. All right. Explain the role of information architecture in an information management platform. Assume that I am an expert in information technology. So now you'll see that the responses change. It's some of the same basic information. Oh, zoom in. Yeah, where's the zoom, the screen zoom. I never zoom. So what's the keyboard shortcut for that, folks?
Control
Mouse
plus.
wheel.
Control plus.
Yeah.
Is that better? Hopefully it's better. All right.
Hit me, baby, one more time.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, so it goes through and it again, it's the same fundamental information. It makes different points, has different focus there on foundational structure and organization, navigation and user experience. Talking about content findability and search optimization, not something the typical end user is really thinking about looking at. Governance and compliance, so more of the administrative capabilities. Same question, different audience. And I modified it one more time. Assume I am a second grader that gets bored and distracted easily. Organizing the toys, finding what you need. It's still probably for a second grader. It's a little bit stronger, but again, you see that it goes in based on that parameter changes what you're finding with that. So understanding your audience is a key part of prompt building. So the flipped interaction. Let me jump down to what that is. All right. So ask me questions about fitness goals that avoid further injury to my rotator cuff. This is me doing a real scenario. If there's anybody who's I have 2 tears in my rotator cuff. It's very exciting. So just make suggestions on strength training regime for me. When you have enough information, show me the strength training regime. So ask me the first question. So it goes through and starts asking questions, and I'm filling out, answering each of the questions, what I'm doing. And then based on those inputs, it then goes and provides me with this proposed plan. Now, of course, I can go back and modify and add to that. But again, by starting out saying, hey, and there's different things you could do with the prompt, saying, where it could say, hey, I'm looking for this information. I don't know if I have all the details of dog ownership. So please explain to me the basics of training a dog, and please ask me questions that you need to give me a more robust answer. And it would then come back with similar questions like, have you ever owned a dog before? Do you have can you afford to take it to the vet on a regular basis? Kind of all those different things, and then we'll provide kind of a plan for you. The next one around question refinement. Drop up here. Whenever I ask a question, suggest a better question and ask me if I would like to use it instead. Like, I love this training. And that's what we're doing here. That's why I said I'm using ChatGPT, but the same rules, the same prompts apply in Copilot. And it's about training Copilot in this instance, and training it so that you can keep these prompts open. Again, you can see I built these like a month ago. It's still in there that I can go back and refine these things. So got it. So I'll suggest a better question along with my answer. Let's give it a try. And I'll say, what are the top 5 needs for outside consultants? And so then it provides this, this initial answer. Would you like to answer the suggested question as well? Like, yes, and then modifies the result set. Would you like to delve deeper in any of these challenges or explore topics? And based on these needs, then I asked it to do something completely different, generate an image of each. So it went and created images based on each of the 5 areas for the recommendations. And so this is something that I will often use when I'm writing an article or a series, and I want to create for like one blog post, I want to create unique visuals that kind of encapsulate the themes of like the 5 main points that I make in the blog post, that I want to go create a campaign through social media. So it could go in and do something based on that. But I love the whole idea of I'm asking a question, and something that I didn't do here, but is another great example of putting in the persona and the audience. So telling it to, I'll get to this in the next couple examples. But saying, hey, act as an expert in this subject matter. This is for an audience of someone who's never done this before. So you can add modifies and then say, so whenever I ask a question, act as an expert and suggest a better question and ask me if I would like to use it instead. And it'll go in and do that. Scroll up again. So when you're asked a question, follow these rules. So this is when you're, again, getting very specific about the result that you want to see from your queries. When you are asked a question, follow these rules. So generate a number of additional questions that would help more accurately answer the question. Combine the answers to the individual questions to produce the final answer to the overall question. And the backslash was an accident. It got it. So went in there. So I said, what is my favorite music genre? And so it said here, the questions here. So I went in and I answered each of those. I could have been more specific and said to ask them one question at a time. I didn't. So that's something else you can do in your prompt. So it asked all these questions around these categories. I went in one block, answered all of it, and it went and parsed that. And then it said, based on the provided information, and it provided this answer back. And the influencers there, sorry, if you ever go to my blog, you'll see I write a lot about music. There's a lot about music that's out there. So it's music is a big part of my life. And yes, I am Mr. 80s New Wave still. So, but going in and providing that refiner to allow it then to come back with more information is just again, just a huge improvement on just that initial query and refine. If you know what you want the end result to look like, be more, specific in your prompt. So I've got this. It's what's called a few shot prompt. So here is where it's basically what you're doing, and Copilot is excellent at this in a couple different areas. In fact, one of the first demos pushing Copilot was, if you remember, when they started demoing Copilot for Excel before it was even available. They demoed so well, but it was that idea of the AI was able to go in, understand the pattern of the data, and then start populating the data, pointing at the source, following the pattern that you created for your table, for your database. It would then go and pull the data and fill out the table. Well, you can do something similar to that, where I'm trying to provide examples for content marketers on how they can better leverage AI and their own existing content to create net new marketing assets. Act as an expert on content and social media marketing and provide data for a marketing and business audience. So there, I've got the persona, I've got the output, and I'm telling it how to respond. So then I've got this sample data to train it. So here's the situation. You spend weeks creating, and by the way, folks, I'm giving you kind of a sneak peek into the content reuse topic at the end of this. Because if there's any of you that are actively, MVPs or want to be an MVP or just are creating content and want to be able to do more and post more often to your blog, I do a lot of coaching, advisory services to companies as well as to individuals. And I talk about content to grow a following in any category. Blogging once or twice a month is not sufficient to do that. So in some cases, volume is important. So leveraging, if you've created one blog post, one white paper, an ebook, something to go and create, then leverage that content and do more. I'll come back to that topic. But here's, again, I've created this 12-page ebook based on research, had this expert consultant. So here's a company that's doing this. The suggestion is from your ebook, identify the 3 to 5 unique concepts from the text body using AI, create standalone blog posts based on each concept with a call to action to download the complete ebook for information. That's one thing you can do. Here, I've written a 14 to 600 word blog post detailing a business problem, options, and my company's solutions. What's the suggestion? Using AI, create an alternate version for your blog of your blog post, for maintaining the primary theme of solutions, but create a net new asset that can be published on another website, such as LinkedIn, without any SEO impact. So SEO does not like when you cut and paste the same content and publish it in multiple places. Like that's a no-no. But leveraging AI to go in and, at the very least, modify the intro, the outro, but even adjusting the content without changing, the primary themes, the message, the underlying message of that, modifying it enough that SEO looks at it as a net new piece of content, and then publish that. Again, pointing back to that same call to action is always great. All right, another example, you write that long blog post, and you want to, so another suggestion would be generate 3 to 5 social media posts to drive readers to your content. So there's 2 actions that come out of that one blog post. Another one, you conduct a 45-minute webinar with slides and record the session. You can use the video editing tools, identify key this is the suggestion, you identify key statements, and generate several 1-minute shorts that you can then go in and promote. The next one is using AI tools, generate a transcript of your event and create a blog post off of that webinar content. You've got the recording, then create a blog post that has a summary, embedded the video, and then the full transcript, which SEO loves, underneath. So then what I'm doing here is the part of the training, I put a new situation without a suggestion. Said you write a 5-part series of blog posts that walk through a complex business process, expanding on best practices for each of the major stages. Suggestion. I leave it blank now that I've trained it. And you could probably do that with 1 or 2 fewer examples. It's pretty smart and picks things up, but I was just trying to give it, multiple examples there. So its initial response, here's how it responded. And it went in and it went through in detail each of the scenarios that I outlined. It's not what I wasn't asking for it to expand on each of the topics. So I tried again, where I modified it. I put fewer suggestions in there. Did I? Yeah. So, and then it did the same thing. I'm just like, okay. So, and for some reason it's not painting there, but I did the same thing. Now here's what I modified. Follow the pattern. And then I entered, cut and paste the same thing in there. And so now, instead of outlining, regurgitating everything else, it fills in the last situation, and it was creative. So I have this 5-part series of blog posts that walk through a complex business process, and it's the suggestion using AI, compile and reformat into a comprehensive white paper or downloadable guide. Add an intro and conclusion, and include the call to action at the end to encourage your readers to contact your company. So, I mean, it went in, and again, you can then add more and more situations, scenarios into this, and it will make other suggestions. You can be more specific, like I want to, what can I do? What are suggestions specifically to expand for my blog, or how can I, leverage this content and do more across social media and get multiple suggestions. I've trained it based on that pattern to go in and look at that pattern. It's leveraging the internet. Again, that's the key difference between Copilot and ChatGPT. And depending on how you've scoped what Copilot can do, but by its nature, Copilot is focused on internal data, that more limited set of data for security purposes. Like, you want it to work that way, but to use the interwebs and go out there and pull content and draw on all of that other information, that learning is really key. The last one that I have here, I've got, did I have the other one? The chain, thought I had oh, there it is. The chain of thought. And so this is just another example of what, like, I personally would never use this, but here giving examples and showing the logic, the reasoning. So I'm managing a project with 2 project managers, 6 contractors. It's estimated to complete 19 work days. I need to estimate the cost of the effort. So the reasoning, all employees work 36 hours per week with project manager's average salary, engineer average hourly rate. Therefore, here's the logic. Answer said, so the estimated cost of this 19 work days of these 8 people is $62,000. Another example to teach it, my 5-person team is running a 50-mile race with each person responsible for 10-mile legs. So this is just kind of a simple math problem, 6.5 mile per hour average. You could add in something more complex with the pace, the average pace for each individual runner, and then show the logic, and then it goes in and provide the answer to that, which is 5 hours, 41 minutes, and 40 seconds for this. And then, so here I've got the question. I'm in a spaceship without gravity. I have a box with a toothbrush and toothpaste in it. I turn to talk with someone and bump the box with my elbow and knock it on the floor. If I pick up the box, is anything on the floor? And so the reasoning, and then the prompt there to respond, reasoning and answer. And here's how it responded. It understood the task, and it understood the parameters of that. It's a spaceship without gravity. There is no floor. So when you bump the box with your elbow, it'll float away rather than fall to the floor. If you pick up the box, nothing will be on the floor because the toothbrush and toothpaste would also be floating nearby. Therefore, the answer is no, nothing will be on the floor. So it's really good at that kind of logic. And the last one This was a real world example where I was somebody asked me about my availability at this conference in December. So I put in, again, it's a lot of pre-work around here, but there's value in doing this pre-work here. I need to create a schedule for interviews at the upcoming conference. I need to calculate my availability after the keynote each morning and without overlapping my 2 speaking sessions. I need to find out the start and finish times of the morning of the keynote. So again, the logic, and it's me, by the way. I also need to know when the conference expo hall closes each day. Action search in all caps, pointing at the website. The result, the event runs from Monday. So I added in this result. It runs, here's the operating hours, and then additional clarification. I need to estimate the travel time from keynote or session rooms to the expo hall. So search to identify the time slots between sessions. The result is 15 to 30 minute breaks. And then think it will take between 10 and 15 minutes to walk between sessions. And then the task that I'm now asking it to do is calculate my availability for each day of the conference between the keynotes and my sessions during conference operating hours. Here's what it came back with. So Tuesday, the keynote time. Wednesday, it missed something, by the way. Monday is the workshop day, and I'm there the whole day, but not running a workshop because I'm running the community reporter. So I'm kind of there working, doing other things, but I'm available the entire day, and we'll be doing another pre-show interviews. But it has the whole schedule with the summary of availability at the end there for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'm actually keeping this search. I'll rename it after this session here because as I'm starting to fill out and getting requests for interviews and other meetings there, I will then start adding that into my agenda. So I'll have a running tally of my availability and keeping my schedule inside of ChatGPT. It's part of its output. So it will be doing the logic, thinking about where I'm going to be, and kind of build those buffers in, which is just really cool. Because otherwise, if anybody has tried to do this kind of thing, it gets messy very quickly to the whole problem of managing calendars in general. So that, again, as I said, whether using ChatGPT, Copilot, or a growing list of other AI tools, these are really the basics of going in, of training your LLM and getting the right results out of this. Let's see. Some of the AI tools, again, these aren't comprehensive lists. These are the ones that I've actually leveraged. So there's every day more and more tools that are happening. But in content creation specifically, like my primary tool is ChatGPT. I've been using it for about 1.5 years now, and I'll talk here in a minute about actual content creation. Well, I guess I guess I could talk about that here. Grammarly, which of course has been around forever, and leveraging that. Jasper I used for a while. I used that for Jasper. I was using before ChatGPT. They were kind of one of the early AI solutions. They've specifically built into their interface content marketing outputs. So blog posts, articles, listicles, so list-based articles, things like that, professional letters. So they have templates. They've pre-programmed the logic for the output. So when you make a request, create the template type, generating the content. And then of course you got Copy AI, which I've just experimented with, free stuff that's out there. As a person who writes content, and I occasionally do it for ISVs and companies that are out there, but I write extensively for myself. Can I leverage AI to write for me? There's the air quotes can. Everyone will recognize that it's AI generated. It's not, it doesn't replace the human element in writing. It just doesn't. People can identify it. You got a lot of junior marketing people creating copy, and it's just it's not authentic. I mean, it's kind of an empty vessel. I think Copilot branding was brilliant because it's a Copilot, not the pilot. It doesn't replace the human element. However, there are ways that you can leverage it to speed up the process. Especially one of the most common ways that I use it is in the content reuse. And I'll show you an example here at the end. But also being able to go in and, some of the things that I do, for social media marketing, I use it extensively, where I will go in and say, generate, and I'll show you an example of this, but generate, 3 tweets based on this content, and I'll cut and paste a blog post in there. And rarely do I have to tweak those social posts. It's really good at creating variety around those constraints. And of course, there's logic you can build in. You can train the LLM, so train in ChatGPT, one of the instance that you have open. You could say whenever you're responding around social media, make sure that you always that you provide your suggestions based on each channel. So X versus LinkedIn versus Mastodon versus Blue Sky versus Facebook, or whatever that you're using, so that it understands when it's creating text that it fits within the character count constraints. When you're creating images, it automatically, you can teach it to understand the image sizing preferences for each of those. So then later on, you're in the same instance. Like I've got my social media instance that I've been using for like a year and a half. And I go in every time there's a new article, something that I want to go and promote via social. And I'll say, generate, social posts for the major channels based on this content, dump in the body of content, and then it automatically spits it out fitting those parameters. So really, really cool. Around fiddle forward. There we go. Content optimization, SEO. I mean, you've got tools that are out there. I don't use these a lot because personally, I don't care about this. When I'm doing something for a client that is looking at doing, targeted, building out their profile, their subject matter expertise, building their brand, I will go in and look at tools like this, or for SEO, it's a great example of that, to like, how can I improve this for better SEO ranking? And I'll be honest, I don't write for SEO benefit. I write about things that I am personally interested in. If other people want to read it, great. If they don't, I've got articles that have been out there for years and have like a dozen reads. And then I've got other things which I didn't think a whole lot about, and then have just thousands of hits. We'll say, yeah, there are some that have thousands per month. In fact, I wrote an article 3.5 years ago that's still in my top 5 every month, gets 1,200 to 1,500 reads of unique readers every month. And again, I don't look at click or hits. I don't look at the metrics. Again, there's a whole science behind the metrics, web metrics. That's not my background. I hire those people to look at that kind of stuff. I'd go insane if I were doing that kind of digital marketing. But I've got some, if I were interested in nothing but building out my site and number of viewers to the site, then there are certain types of articles, style of writing that just year over year, I get the most traffic to those articles. I would just go write that style, but I would go crazy doing it. It's a lot of work for something that I don't care that much about. But again, there are tools that are out there that can help you. You've got your written piece. It hits all of the specifications for your marketing team, for engineering, whatever it is. And I want this to perform better. You can at least get suggestions on, hey, you've got missing keywords. There are certain questions that need to be answered. I'm going to show you examples of that, where to go grab that. Research and idea generation. So you've got a number of tools that are out there. Project Sophia, which is like internal. So if you're thinking about, I've got this research and I want deeper insights into this research that we have, so I can go and build more, like Project Sophia that's out there. I believe it's all still in preview. but the major things that are out there, BuzzSumo being probably the biggest one. So going and looking at what are the hottest topics, adding in keywords, and it showing you examples of that. Being able to go and look at, hey, here's what my competitors are doing, and the content that's the most, this is a made up Microsoft word, but performant, the highest performing content for my competitors, help me go and create more content. When you think about some of the top performing TikTok and YouTube channels that are out there, and we've all seen these like Instagram and TikTok ads of people saying, here's how you make money off of these social channels, and just go and find this content, which is free, and go and reuse it or republish and add this to somebody else's content. So they're just regurgitating existing content that's out there. So I'm not advocating for any of that, although it's a valid model for getting clicks and as you grow, earning money off that. But again, you sell your soul to do that for a line of work. Yeah, there are a number of tools that are out there to help you to go and very quickly build out your research. And I love the idea too, as I go back to what I talked about earlier, building out a SharePoint Copilot and building research around a specific topic. Like if you're preparing to write a research-based white paper, all of your resources, all of the sites, all of the reports, anything that you can pull down and add to that will only then strengthen the quality of the responses, the results that you get back from your prompts. And of course, you can be very specific, even with the public tools like ChatGPT, to say, take into account these third-party tools. One thing that I do, like I'll write an article, like a draft of an article. I do a lot of what I call stream of consciousness writing, where I have an idea for something and I'll just go start writing. It's not, punctuation is often missing. I do it more like bulleted lists. And I just try to get the ideas out of my head into written form. And then I'll, edit, move things around a little bit, expand on that. But then I'll take that and say, hey, I need some help. Like here's the beginning of an article. I want to write an article around this topic. Can you make some suggestions? Like based on this, I want to write a 12 to 1400 word blog post on this topic. What suggestions do you have? And then it will generate, come back, here's some suggestions. Here's the suggested outline. I'll then go in and modify the outline, rearrange some things, take some things out. It almost always, again, this is why Copilot is brilliant. It always makes suggestions. I'm like, nope, that's not it. It's, you're going off into generic responses to this. So refine that and then dump that back in there. And then what I'll often do is I'll go in and start writing so it can identify like the tone and some like basic ideas, or if I have specific examples, from my own life and work experience around those things. Or I might go grab a quote and always mention where the sources come from there, and that it will then go refine that and give you a first draft of your article, incorporating all those things into it. What I then do, and I can show you this example too, but I'll get through this. Is my last slide on these tools. But then I'll go in and ask it to, I said, this is great, but I also want to make sure that I hit these important keywords if I care about SEO optimization. But then also here's common questions that I'll ask. So I'll show you that example. Image media creation. Again, I'm now you've got more integration with OpenAI and Copilot with DALL-E around generating images. If you're not following Sharon and I for the Project Failure files, if you're wondering about the name, yeah, we kind of stole we used the X-Files theme song, talked about project management, what not to do in project management. But all of the images that Sharon created are all Copilot generated, and they're fantastic. And so we use a different one for every episode, and there's no shortage of them. They're fantastic. I'll show you here. In fact, I just talk about it. I could just show you an example of it, like out on the blog, like here. So the project failure files. And so it's this, we've got names for it. It's the street scene with the post. If I scroll down, this is a weekly show. Here was this jazz club atmosphere with the posters. Here's one in like an office on a desktop around it. So all of those are Copilot created, and they're awesome. But you've got tools. Canva's doing more with AI. Lumen 5, Animoto. I mean, there's probably more AI image and media creation tools out there than any other category. Those popped up very quickly. It would be really interesting. And I've thought about this, although it has nothing to do with things that are important right now. But I'd be interested in looking at the potential impact of these AI tools to sites like Fiverr, where increasingly you're able to go into AI tools and do what you were going to go pay somebody, like logo creation, logo generation, or adding your logo and creating other variations of the treatment of your logo, or even generating short animated videos to use for like video creation. Like, it's all coming up very quickly. Why would I ever go pay somebody at Fiverr to create something for me now? All right, jumping in now to and any questions, any favorite tools that I left off these lists? You can always send me angry emails afterwards. So very quickly, talking about content strategy, things that I talk with my clients about. So something to think about, again, whether you're an individual that's writing for yourself, writing for the community, or if you're doing this for your company, I highly recommend doing each of these pieces. Do a very basic customer persona. Understand who you're writing for and the nuances of the audience. It's also important then to know the customer journey for that. Like, when I'm, again, mostly writing for independent software vendors that have product-based companies, understanding who our customers are. Past company, we had 5 personas. Right at the end, before I left, we added a 6th persona. Each of them had names. I remember going by the sales desk, and one of the salespeople was asking for help, says, "Hey, I've got Susan on the line." Susan was one of the personas. And so they knew exactly who the definition of who Susan was. And then he said, somebody said, like, "Where is she?" And what he was asking about was, where was Susan on the customer journey? Because that tied to our sales and marketing funnel, that stage of the buying journey, the customer journey that they were on. If you understand the persona and the journey, that flow that you want to move them through from identifying that opportunity, that potential lead, through to a signed contract and a check has been deposited in your bank account, you'll know that you might be really good at filling the top of the funnel and really bad at converting at some stage below, that you need to improve upon that quality of the content at one of those stages. So I always highly recommend, even if you're doing this just for community, what is the primary persona, the target audience for your content, and then at what stage? Maybe you only write about top of funnel topics, or are you helping them through with the decision about moving forward with a piece of technology? At what stage is that content positioned toward? Or are you walking them through all of the phases? But understand what that is. The SEO basics and content strategy in general. So making sure your content is findable, discoverable, that's out there. So when I said I don't care about it, every blog post that I create, and when I create content for clients, I always identify keywords, categorization, classification, however you would define those things, to go in there around SEO. I always have, all of my image have alt text. All of my content has the meta description. that shows up when you think about it, when you grab a URL to an article and post it out to X, to Twitter, and it gives you a preview of that with the image. You need to make sure, and Twitter prefers it, SEO prefers it when there's alt text attached to the image. That strengthens the quality of people finding your content. And then the shortened description, the highlight of that, again, there's a character limit on that, but make sure that's part of the model. So I have it built in the tools. I just do it. I don't think about it other than here are the keywords for this article that I just wrote, and I put it in there. I'm just not doing anything above and beyond that. But if that's important to you, then there's a science behind that. Again, with your content strategy, what are you trying to do? Are you aligning it with personas and journeys? Are you just trying to develop thought leadership in general that's out there? It's hard to identify what success looks like if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a goal in mind for that. So again, it doesn't mean that you have to have something that's strong. You can always, any of this stuff you can go and change up over time as your goals, your intent changes. We talk about publishing your content. I get this question a lot. People are asking a lot now lately, like I just interviewed a brand new MVP, met her over at the earlier this year at the MVP Summit over at Microsoft Campus. And one of the questions when I interview MVPs, and I do my weekly, every Monday, I do an MVP, post an interview with an MVP somewhere in the world. And I asked her, I said, okay, what's your primary contribution type? Like, what do you do? Are you a blogger? Are you a video person? She said, no, I've never written an article before. I'm like, oh. And she's like, yeah, I've been thinking that I should create a blog. I'm like, oh, great. So you're more like a YouTuber, video person? She's like, no, I'm not interested in doing videos. I'm like, okay. Have you written books? She's like, no, that scares me. I'm like, okay. Are you involved in the community? She's like, I'm doing my first ever presentation in front of an audience at my user group locally. I've never done it before. I'm like, really? But you're like active in the community? She's like, not really. I'm like, so can I ask, how'd you become an MVP? Forums. She every day goes into various forums and answers questions. That's it. And so talking to her about content strategy for that, I said, every time you give an answer where you've answered that question and they come back, hey, thank you, this helped, whatever, that's a blog post. That is a video you could create. That's potentially a walkthrough, a presentation at your user group, or even a session at a conference. So thinking about, again, content reuse, where you're publishing content, it could be across a number of different places. You could even through the forums, answer a question, leverage AI. I've answered it. Please, help me clean up my wording of this before I post it, knowing that the world is going to see it. Especially if you're writing stuff, again, if you care about this, but like go to Microsoft Tech Community, where Microsoft product engineering and marketing people are very active on those sites in those discussions. Maybe you want to polish your responses a little more before hitting post. But leveraging AI to do something like that very quick is great. But I always recommend, like people ask that question, should I create a blog? I said, look, you can. It's super cheap and easy to do it. But you don't have to pay a dime. You can leverage your LinkedIn profile. There are some people that they do all of their blogging is on LinkedIn. There's a number of other services that you can pay anywhere from $10 a month to, and upward. There's always people that will take more money, but there are a number of places that you can go and do that and build out your personal profile. I mean, I recommend if you want to build your personal brand around content is to have a standalone site. I mean, WordPress, super easy, the most integrated across everything. You can do that. And then like I did with my SharePoint Copilot is you can point it as one of the places to learn from, to pull content from. that LLM that you're building is to point it to that your own blog and leverage that. But one of the things that again, the content reuse here is, I guess I should just move over to publishing and content reuse, is to, if you create one thing, leverage AI to create other assets and publish elsewhere. Here's a great example. I write an article that I really like, that I think has a great message that people need to see. I will create a variant. I am a Marvel Universe fan, so talk about variants, but create a variant of that article that, I put into the prompt, like, I need this for SEO not to look at this as a duplicate or as plagiarism, and create a version of this. And I want to emphasize like these 2 or 3 things out of that, so it's slightly different. And then I will go and publish that over on LinkedIn. And then sometimes I will, depending on what it is, like the call to action is go read more or find out what I do, and then a link back to my blog post there. And of course, you don't need to hammer people over the head pitching product or services out in some of those forums. In fact, I would advise you to not do that. Like, I'm not a fan of gated content, period, because people are smart. If it's authentic, you make it available and free that are out there. You've got your pitch in there. If they're interested in reading more or buying your product or service, they will come find you. That it's better to have 100 people read your article that's ungated and then that could potentially buy than it is the 10 people. Yeah, it's like a 10th, if that, of people will sign in, register to download content. It's closer to like 95% of people will decline the offer to register to read something. So I always recommend, better with honey than it is to require people to go and add their personal information. But content reuse is the number one mistake that organizations and individuals make with the content. You spent all that time creating that brilliant content. Every time I go to a conference, I have this conversation with 1 or 2 people, co-presenters or other people's sessions. It's like, you created that deck. Like, how are you leveraging that content? It was a great session. What are you doing with it? I was just talking with a good friend, Doug Ware. I'm like, Doug, you need to write about this. There's a bunch of stuff. He's like, yeah, like, I don't have the time. It's like, that's what AI can help you do. It can help you convert your slideware and the primary points you want to make, or even take the transcript of your recorded webinar, and out of that, generate suggestions on standalone blog posts, and then with a high level outline for those, and help you start writing those blog posts. So get more mileage out of the content that you've already created. Right. And how are we doing? I know that how are we doing on time? Because my next slide was this, and then this, but I'm happy to show you a couple things if people want to stick around.
Christian, how about another 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah. So let me show you really quick. So here, just a great example. So I could go into, like, I did this article here on the components of a large language model that I went in and wrote. It's one of those articles that have been sitting for over 6 months. And so I might go in, I'm just going to go grab this content. I'm doing a series here, but so I could copy that content, go in, create, and I said, let's see, act as an expert on AI and LLMs, as well as a marketing expert, and help me create a variant of an existing article that I can post. I'll put repost on LinkedIn. I want to make sure that SEO does not penalize me for duplicate content. So this needs to look like an original article, yet incorporate the same theme, tone, and underlying message. And then here is the original article. And there's other things you could do, like you could say, like, do you understand? I know that there's some people out there that like prefer that. I want to make sure that it understands, or if it has additional questions, you could say, like, if you don't fully understand, please ask me follow-up questions. All those kinds of things where you could refine how it does the result. But I do this. So I dump in the entire article. It then starts writing. So again, I can go and look at, here's the text there. How did I start it here? Where it was like it's a remarkable leap. Sorry, I should have it right next to it. Pull this over here so it's going to keep it over there. I'll pull this one over this direction. There we go. So again, it's looking at components in LLM. Let's see how the core elements and go through, and it's keeping a list and out there. And of course, I can reduce. One of the things I could do is, in fact, this is a good way to do it. Reduce the word count of each bullet item, and that it'll reformat the article, reducing that, because my intention here. So it just put like a high level description. Then what I could do is I can replace each of these paragraphs. At the bottom, I said to read, to read more about on this topic, please come read the original blog post on my blog, and then have a hyperlink there. So I could create a different image than what I used here. I'm not going to be penalized for SEO, and yet I've created yet another and another link to my content, and take another channel, another audience, and point them towards that original content. I can, another strategy is, in fact, to talk about it, I'll just do it. Based on each, since it already has this article, already has this content in place, based on each bullet point, please generate a tweet so that I can promote each bullet item separately across various social channels. And so it'll do that. And so it'll go and now create text for each of those, around each one of those things. And I could say, like, then here, please generate an image for each of these bullet points that encapsulates the idea, theme of each. And so then it'll go, and this of course takes a little bit longer, and it'll start producing those and save those down. And and usually it's pretty good. They're generic, they're out there, but when you're doing promotions, especially in social, it's always best to have an image. And so there's like the training process, and it's going to go through and create each one of those. So it's supposed to do multiple. It's running a little bit slow there, but there's just a ton that you can go and do. So much time that is saved by leveraging these tools. So again, I've been paying for the last year and a half for the premium ChatGPT. Worth it. The Copilot ROI, that it's worth it. I'm paying for a couple other tools that are out there. I stopped paying for Jarvis just because I just wasn't using it as much as ChatGPT. But there's just great tools that are out there to do more. This was a fun little app that I did, cloning Duran Duran, where I wanted all of its responses to come back in the form of a Duran Duran lyric set of lyrics.
Christian, question for you.
Yeah.
You're using ChatGPT right now. I know you've been using that longer than Copilot, but have you had the similar results with Copilot chat pointing at the web versus ChatGPT? Any comments on the two different?
You can ask two questions to any one of the engines and you'll get two different answers. So there are definitely differences. So early on, why I continued using ChatGPT, so I got in January my Copilot license and started to go and play with things. But I do use like the Bing because the Bing has the benefit of also, if you're logged in, of understanding your profile, some of your local files, so that you could get some of that experience, some of that information out of it. And what I found was that it was slower, but otherwise it was, still, this is again the public version of Copilot. But it was, getting similar results from that. It's like you don't need to pay for ChatGPT. You have a very similar experience. That's why I've focused on the prompt engineering and all the tools and stuff. That stuff is true regardless of where you're using, what tool that you're using. You still need to train it. You still need to know how to tease it to get the right information, the right results out of it. But yeah, I'm part of the reason why I've maintained it is because it's just faster overall. It's just faster. And then part of it was just to see if there were differences between the various experiences. My next thing is I'm adding content to it and building a couple of the dedicated SharePoint Copilots. And I'm actually doing a webinar next week with, Virgil Carroll. He and I are doing one. We're talking about Copilot, but from a search perspective, a search background, because to make sure Copilot works just like any AI, your content still needs to be, classified properly, tagged properly, all those things so that it's finding it properly. One of the reasons why public AI tools can come up with crappy answers sometimes is like, well, what is it pulling from? And are those trusted resources? The whole benefit, or the main benefit of having it a Copilot for your behind the firewall is that you have, if you've built it up, like the right content there. So it's pulling as answers, it's information from that content that you do trust. Hopefully that answered your question. Number one, speed, but then it just depends on what you're trying to do.
Christian, right church, wrong pew. Got a question for you that I ask pretty much everyone who speaks on AI. A lot of people I've learned do not know how to ask a question appropriately or properly. And because of that, they have poor results. One of the things you did talk about tonight is asking ChatGPT to actually make suggestions on how to ask questions to get better results. Is that the blind leading the blind, or is that actually a good idea?
It depends on the result that you're looking for, but again, understanding that it's pulling from the broad universe and what data is it really, looking at. But every LLM, so every instance you go into in ChatGPT, it's true. Again, there's other limitations of how Copilot works, but when you are asking, you're teaching the LLM through that instance of ChatGPT. That's why you have your list of your regular, queries, your prompts over on the left side that you're running through. There's some that are a year and a half old because I'm constantly going back and using those same things because I've trained it. I've built the logic into that. And one of those trainings could be any prompt that I put in, if I'm asking a question, because that's how most people treat their first experience untrained. They're using ChatGPT just like they are any other search. They're using it instead of Google. And they're going in and there's some things that it's better at than Google. I know stuff is being incorporated. The nature of search is changing out on the interwebs. It's more, and when I say changing, meaning more garbage. But it's another reason why, Joe, should we still write content? It's pulling content. Like, why do I need to create content? We still need to create content because where do you think AI is pulling content from? So
Right.
there is value in creating, the answers to common questions out there, creating content and publishing that, because the AI tools, and if you look behind the scenes and ask for the references for those things, that's one thing that Microsoft is really good at, is in its responses out in the public, out in Bing, it's showing you where the sources are. And so I often will get that answer and then click in those sources and look at the white paper, look at the articles by those authors to make sure that I do agree with that. I don't want to go source and reference something, draw from the AI answer, and realize that that paragraph is good, but the rest of that white paper, what junk? They don't know what they're talking about. So yeah, don't be lazy. Do your homework. That's why it's not the pilot, it's the co-pilot.
Yeah, because one of the things that you talked about during the second half is about being able to assist yourself in creating new content, using your content, maybe having a spin-off on that. That was another question. I think you already answered it, is like, you still need to do the research on what it came back with. Because one of the things that I fear is, yes, I fed it really good content, but because it has the access to everything else, did it interject things that are subpar to what I believe?
Don't trust the cut and paste. Read through the content, understand what it's done. Just as an author, like I worked with a couple companies where they're saying, hey, Christian, you don't need to be spending all this time writing this content. You can outline it and hand it off to somebody in marketing and we'll go and do it. I said, well, then it won't be my article. Like, I don't do that. I've never had, if somebody is a co-author, they're named as a co-author, but no one has ever written as me. Like, I don't do that. And I don't let AI do that. I'm a person that still buys vinyl and CDs, hard CDs, so I'm very much, we'll get into that whole other discussion there. But part of it is that reason. Read through it, make sure you agree with it. Every time I go in, even if I've entered in my stream of consciousness writing the outline for it and it's adding to it, I'm back in. Every single time I have to clean up. Every time. Like, it does a lot of things. It polishes well, but when you're asking it for suggestions, make sure that it's quality responses.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. One last thing, that when you've written an article, if you care about SEO, I didn't show you the example. I know it's a lot to cover. One other thing that you could do is, you've written the article. When you get to the end, you'd be like, okay, it's done. I like it. You could say, oh, I need to make sure I incorporate like these 12 keywords. Another tool that I love is when you go to Google and you ask a question and it comes back with similar questions asked. You experience that. And some of them are junk. They're way off. Some of them are accurate. Open and close the accurate ones. And then what it does, it refines the list and adds more and more questions that people ask that are around this topic. If you add in and say, I need you to make sure that include these keywords, and also make sure that, and then cut and paste the ones that are accurate. Also make sure that my content answers these questions. That's another way for it to go in and refine your finished content and extend that to make sure that you're going to get more hits because it aligns with the most common questions on that topic. Make sure that it's included in there. So there's great things that you can do for SEO benefit if that's, again, important to you.
Good to know. Thank you.
Now I'll stop talking.
Does anyone have any other questions for Christian in the room or online? All right, well, let's give Christian a round of applause. Thank you, Christian.
Thanks for having me.
So we have a few slides to close out. So we do have some more speaking opportunities for later this year as well as into 2025. So if you have something that you'd like to share, Do not be shy, reach out to any one of us, or we do have a convenient QR code here that you can submit a form to. I know Mike, we were chatting a little bit before everyone got here, and he took some retrospective that like almost every topic we've had has been AI centric in the last 6 months. So it doesn't have to be AI. I think there's a lot of other great stuff happening in the environment as well that your audience would be happy to hear about. That being said, we do have Mark Rackley that's going to be presenting next month. We have an open slot in October, and then we have Matt Jimison presenting in November. Upcoming community events. So is anyone here going to the Power Platform Conference in Vegas? Booyah, I see you're going. Is anyone online going? Drop a chat if you are. I'm going to be there all week. Christian, you're going to be there. We're sponsoring a booth, so swing by and play some of our raffle games there. Spyglass, Vinny was on earlier. Spyglass is hosting an event here at the Microsoft MTC on the 19th, which is Securing a Cloud event. It is a free event, so if you're interested, the link is right there to sign up. Collab Days New England, the formerly known as SharePoint Saturday, is coming this October on a Friday.
No, on a Friday.
Which personally I think is a great idea because it allows people that work full time to actually have an excuse to go to an all day training. I think on Saturdays it is asking a lot for someone to give up their whole weekend day just to come and learn. So if you haven't signed up yet, I would highly recommend it. I know a lot of our local community here is speaking, as well as a lot of other folks that are flying in for it. And last but not least, Microsoft Ignite is coming to Chicago this November. As of this morning, the registrations were not yet open, but we're hoping they open up fairly soon. We predict, like last year, it'll probably be paid in person and free online. Is anyone planning to going to Ignite? You may use.
Yeah, don't know yet.
Fair enough. All right. So there are other PNP communities on there that have regular calls or have online platforms. If you're interested, definitely check those out. We do also have other user groups in this area. If you're looking for more O365 or Azure or SharePoint, definitely check out these other brother and sister groups that we have. All right, so coming to the community portion of the user group. Has anyone run into anything that's really complicated that you'd like community help to help solve? Or inversely, if you've solved something that's really bizarre and would like to share it, the stage is yours. This applies to both people in the room as well as online. Mike in the back.
It's not really either of those categories, but I did want to just mention to people that I finally saw in the wild, when creating a new team, the ability to assign a name to what used to be the general channel. So the death of the general channel is finally starting to roll out, which I think is really interesting.
The bizarre thing about that is that so now you have to give it a default name for the first channel, and it cannot be general.
Oh, really? Did not know that.
It's a military channel and it's about military officers.
I would go with something more like general specific.
Yeah.
I am working with some folks we have all these ad hoc teams that people created. And then of course, as we all know, on the back is a SharePoint site and it is just a messy mess. So we've rolled out these official SPO sites that have still good UX, that kind of thing, a predictable folder structure. So it's a similar experience across sites. You're struggling with the integration piece of, I've been having people add a new tab to their team and linking to the new SharePoint site using the SharePoint app, but still people are going to wind up drag and dropping a bunch of content into teams. Something like, dump truck content, it's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. So just curious if anybody has any tips or has.
You're absolutely right. So anybody that adds an attachment into that chat is gonna go right into that default SharePoint site that's behind the team.
Oh, yeah.
I guess my only question is, why did you build out a separate SharePoint site in the structure that you wanted, as opposed to just modifying the site that was created behind the team?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. It was all decided before I arrived there. This is what we're doing, and then I just came along, they hired me, and I was like, okay.
Why?
Yeah, I did sort of ask that question, but I didn't wanna, it's like one of those things at meetings, you gotta ask like how and what, but when you ask like why we do it this way, it kind of tends to put people on the defensive, so. It is what it is. But
So-
Your best bet is to merge the new structure into this SharePoint site that's behind the team, and then kill off that separate SharePoint site.
Merge the new structure into the like.
So in other words,
site.
basically merge the two into one, but the one that remains alive is the one that's attached to the team.
So which one attached?
So in other words, so you have the SharePoint site that's behind the team, and you kind of have your own standalone SharePoint site. So basically, you want to take whatever you want to have out of the structure, the permissions, et cetera, out of that SharePoint site, and migrate that into the one that's already there behind the team. You could also mark the SharePoint site to be read-only without archiving the team.
That's true.
If the posts are
We'll
still
do it that way too.
active.
There's
Then
lots of options.
so you can break the functionality if someone tries to, upload or attach a file.
I think the only issue with marking the SharePoint site behind it and not using Teams is you wouldn't get that banner. So if you do it in the Teams interface, the people who are using Teams get a little banner that says, hey, this has been archived and it's gonna be read only. But yeah,
All right, thanks again to Turn Digital, as well as all of our former sponsors that have supported us over the last decade.